Saw, dudes! Welcome back to Backlot Banter, where today we're breaking down, perhaps, if I'm not mistaken, one of the greatest franchises known to cinema history. That, of course,
Yeah.
is the Saw franchise of films, ranging from 2004 to 2010 and then 2017, and now, ladies and gentlemen, coming up in the year of our Lord 2021, we're getting another chapter to the Saw series. Now, Tucker and I watched all of them, not including Spiral, in the span of 2 days.
Yeah.
It broke us a little bit. It broke our spirits. It broke our minds, and it may
Broke
have
our
broken our
friendship. Yeah.
it broke our friendship, and it may have broken our perception of what a good film is.
hmm
Because boy, oh boy, did our we like I said, we're gonna be doing a ranking of the entire series, and I kind of got softer on them and more appreciative of their style as it went on.
hmm
But if you're watching this video, you're obviously a huge fan of the Saw franchise, so thanks for clicking on this. And we're about to break all these down. They might have blended together a little bit, but thankfully, my good friend Tucker Hazel took extensive notes on a
Oh God. I,
majority of these films.
I took way too many notes, man.
We had to hang on to something throughout this series,
hmm
and I think the only way to do that is to meticulously write out what happens in each one.
Yeah.
So what the plan of attack here is, we'll be breaking down a little bit. Each film we'll spend about 5 to 10 minutes on each one, and at the end we'll do an entire ranking. How's that
Yeah.
sound? Okay. Now, Tucker, what better place to start is there than the beginning? Saw 1, 2004, starring Carrie Elways and Lee Winnell, directed by James Wan. We might be showing our ranking a little early here, but I think we both agree it's the best one, right? Am I
I
right?
I think this is a stone cold classic in terms of its influence, in terms of the creativity of the concept, how it started such an interesting series. And also it's probably just one of my favorite horror movies of all time. I definitely grew a little bit more critical of it on this rewatch. I had first seen it about 3 years ago, and I enjoyed it a lot more then on the first watch because I think part of this movie is the initial experience. The best part of the movie is
Mhm.
the initial experience, is not knowing the twist at the end with Jigsaw getting up off the floor and not knowing what to expect in terms of him, cutting his foot off or turning off the lights and seeing the X on the wall. All of those things and the ways that it's framed through flashbacks and cam footage and all of that is so unique. It's a really impactful first watch. I think that goes a little bit down on a second watch because you know exactly what to expect, but it's still the best of the series. I I,
Yeah.
I think pretty much bar none.
It's incredibly low budget. I think it was like the budget was like 1.6 million. James Wan and Lee Winnell were fresh out of film school, and just that low budget, like almost B movie sort of thing, even though this gained like a massive following and a massive gross worldwide. But you really can feel that like low budget griminess to it.
Yeah,
That is a through line through all the Saw series, but it just feels the most genuine in Saw 1.
genuine because most of the things that turned into the style of Saw were only done because they had a low budget. They had
Hmm.
to insert flashbacks to cover up story. They had to make shots that were through security cameras and stuff because they didn't have time for reshoots. And a lot of that came down to the fact that they didn't have the money, they didn't have the budget. So
Mm.
it created a style that, and I think that's why it feels more genuine here, is because they didn't have a huge budget and then make it look like that. They
Yeah,
worked with what they had.
exactly.
And I really do enjoy this film. I think that it starts off really strong. I think the concept of having two guys locked in a room, one of them told to kill the other, they're chained to the wall. I think all of that is just, for me, that's a perfect movie concept.
Yeah.
Like it gives you an interesting connection to the characters. It sets you in a very unique position. Is okay, we're in a bathroom. Like I don't even know what this room really is.
Disgusting, the grossest bathroom known to film history, I
Oh
might add.
God.
That is just the grimiest, muddiest, brownest, just muckiest bathroom I've ever seen.
Yeah, and it only gets worse over the
It
course of the
only gets
series
worse because
because
boy howdy do we return to that room a number of times over
which
the
we will
series.
colloquially refer to as the Saw room.
That is the
There's
Saw room.
there's the Saw room, there's a Saw 2 house, and there's a Saw 3 room,
Yeah.
which we will probably end up referencing throughout this review series. But
Yeah.
um, I don't know how much more there is to say about the original because
No,
while it is the best, I think it's definitely the one that you need to talk about the least because it is so much clearly at the top.
I think what we should do is we should talk about three things for each of these movies
Okay,
for
all
sure.
right.
We should talk about the characters, we should talk about the traps, and we should talk about Jigsaw himself.
Okay.
Okay. So let's break it down with the characters. The primary characters we have are you got Tap, portrayed by Donald Glover, who they got somehow for this movie.
Yeah.
You got Adam, portrayed by Lee Winnell, and Dr. Lawrence Gordon, portrayed by Carrie Elways.
Yeah.
And then also Amanda is there, but
Kind of. Yeah.
she's not as much of a primary character in this.
Mhm.
Those are the three core characters, and of course, we'll get to Tobin Bell as John Kramer at the
Yeah.
end.
I think both Gordon and Adam are probably some of the best realized characters in this series because instead of putting 40 people into traps, they put 3 with a couple others sprinkled around that they intentionally don't give any development to, like usually not even any dialogue. The extra traps, as we're going to talk about, are not super developed. You don't see the setup and stuff. They're just, hey, he's making other traps. Like this isn't the only trap. But the focus on only 2 people in the main trap definitely allows you to get a better sense of these people and the situations they're in. And when you get the flashbacks to why they're there and the relationships to each other, and as the movie goes on, the web starts to get tangled even more. They're probably the best
I'd say
characters
so.
in the series. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't have this like big complex backstory that this big dark backstory that other characters in the future movies have. They're pretty much just some basic ground level guys is what it feels like for a basic ground level movie. So we talked a bit about the bathroom, which is the primary trap of Saw 1. There's some other ones that we see Tucker referenced, like that don't get a lot of time, like the barbed wire trap.
Yeah.
The
guy's name is Paul, who's in there?
Of course, Paul.
Classic Saw character.
Classic character who does come back, funnily enough, in one of the last ones.
Does he? I don't even remember that.
We see him get abducted or whatever.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then you have that weird candle one. You know what I'm talking about? Where the guy's covered in the flammable grease.
Yeah, with the number.
And then,
walls.
of course, you have the iconic reverse bear trap.
Yeah. Which, boy, good lord, do they like that trap. And I think for a good reason. I think it's the simplest of them, but it has the most, like, visual impact. It's very clear about what's going on. And it's also very easily repeatable and put into other circumstances, which is why that iconic boom, slam it on the table, holy shit, it's the reverse bear trap, continues to show up throughout the series. But that's probably one of my favorite traps just because of its simplicity. And while I do enjoy some of the more elaborate ones that you get in the later films, it's clear to the point. You got a person in a chair with a key and a way they're gonna die, and then a tape, and that's it. Like that's the pure essence of a Jigsaw trap.
Yeah, and let's talk about Jigsaw himself in this. Tobin Bell, just a great performer in this role. I think we've agreed over the course of these movies.
Yeah.
He really grabs that role and just sells the shit out of it. I mean, let's not kid around here.
Yeah.
He's got the little flavor saver throughout some of the series. Sometimes he's got the stubble. Sometimes he's bald. He's got a number of looks, but the character remains the same. And that character is a guy who pretends to be like, I'll cherish your life. People don't appreciate what is given to them, and I make them appreciate it. I've never killed anybody. When he very clearly has a contempt for human life, does kill people, as is established over the course of the series.
Yeah.
And is generally just all around. He's sometimes smart and sometimes an idiot. Let's just say that.
Sure. Yeah. But I think in this one, in all honesty, I can't exactly remember which aspects of his backstory we're introduced to in the first one, because after watching 8 Saw movies, which he's in all of them, he's personally the only characters in every single movie. Yeah, most definitely.
Even though he dies 3 movies in.
Oh yeah. But we are introduced to so many aspects of his character. I can't exactly remember which aspects of them were actually introduced in the first one. We probably found out he had cancer, or was that in 2? I can't exactly remember. But still, I think the concept of this just a guy who's setting up all this stuff. He doesn't have the crazy invincibility of a Jason Voorhees or a Michael Myers. He's not as wacky and paranormal as a Chucky or a Freddy Krueger. He's just terrifying. Like
Yeah.
I think he's the best serial killer of film. I think
That's
because
a big
I think
call.
the only reason I say that is because of how intricate his backstory and development becomes through the course of the series. He's had a
Mhm.
lot more time to develop in comparison to serial killers from, like Seven or Zodiac or something. But I think he's probably my favorite.
Yeah, I think so. Like I said up top, we agree. Saw 1 is the best Saw.
Yeah.
Okay.
And for that, I think we put it in tentatively first place. It will
Mm,
stay there, but that begins our ranking of the Saw movies.
hmm
And
Okay.
now on to Saw 2.
Saw Two Fingers, as is on the poster.
Yeah.
Uh, I didn't actually rewatch this one for
Hmm.
for this rewatch in ranking. But as I remember, it's kind of just the house. All the protagonists are dumb, including Donnie Wahlberg.
Yeah.
Jigsaw is kind of more convoluted, and his backstory and his motivations are more convoluted, and he's like stupidly cryptic throughout this movie.
Oh,
Uh,
that's
e-
true. Yes.
even though he is through the rest of the series, this one just stands out a lot. So yeah, Saw 2 is for sure one of my least favorites.
It's one of my least favorites, bro. I think a lot of that is the execution. I think the concepts on the whole are actually pretty interesting. I think the idea of placing all these people in the house and having them sort of work together, and they've got the numbers on the back of their neck, but they don't figure out till the very end,
Mm,
is interesting. I think the introduction of Amanda as his assistant and
yep.
sort of telling her backstory about how she survived the reverse bear trap, which we saw in the first one, but then she was trained by Jigsaw to help him out. That's all cool. I personally think that the twist at the end, that it was all pre-recorded and not happening at the same time, even though it seemed like that, I think that's really interesting. Unfortunately, it's all told through the eyes of Eric Matthews, played by Donnie Wahlberg, who's
Good
just
old
an
Donnie
arrogant
Wahlberg.
asshole cop who doesn't care about his son, but then his son is in a trap. And I think that's the worst part of it. And a lot of the characters that are trapped in the house aren't very interesting, but and especially his son. His son's really lame. But we also get a lot more of Tobin Bell as Jigsaw in this because he's
Mhm.
got time to interact with other characters, and we see him sitting in a chair. He's got an IV bag. He's coughing, dying of cancer. He's like, "Can I have a glass of water?"
Yeah. This is the one with the classic line. I think the first time we hear it when he says, "I haven't killed anybody." Bullshit, Mr. Kramer.
Yeah.
You indeed have killed people. If we harken back to only one movie ago, remember when you made that weird shotgun tripwire thing where you
Oh,
made a booby
true.
trap
Yes.
to kill a cop
I
by
think that
riddling
was
him with shotgun
that
shells?
was Tap's partner, Detective Singh,
Yes.
who just got holy shit. He just got obliterated.
Obviously, he wasn't cherishing his life chasing after that serial killer down a hallway, Tucker.
Mhm.
That's why he was killed.
Yeah. But Saw 2 House, I think, is cool. It's got a few good traps in it. We can already talk the characters, not great. Eric Matthews
No.
does return, but in future films in really minor roles.
Mhm.
But he's not. I don't like him very much. I think the introduction of Amanda is the strongest character of this movie of two. But on the whole, this is one of the weaker casts of characters.
Yeah. We can talk about the syringe trap, I suppose. The syringe pit, I feel, is probably like the most iconic thing from this movie.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well,
Just
there's
because,
that. There's the hands that get caught in
oh
the
yeah,
blades. There's the boiler furnace that the guy gets caught
yeah,
in. The flames keep going.
hmm
What else is in Saw 2? I can't really remember, and I think that's probably a sign of the fact
yeah.
that they're not the greatest. There's a guy who like twists the
Oh
key,
yeah,
shot in the head. Yeah,
yeah.
got shot right in the eye. Yeah, that's pretty
Yeah.
good.
But yeah, on the whole, not very good, not very memorable. All the this is something that I'll appreciate as we rank the rest of these movies is a competent protagonist, and
Mhm.
Saw 2 does not have any competent people in it.
No. I mean, Amanda is competent because she knows what's going on because she helped it set all that up. And I think that's an interesting twist, having her on the inside of it. And she actually gets thrown into the syringe trap. Like,
Yeah,
she's the helper, but she gets put in one of the traps, even though, like,
by
she's,
that big meathead guy.
yeah, who at the end of Saw 2 ends up in the Saw 1 room and dies in there. And
Yeah,
his body is also in there,
the return
decomposing alongside Adam.
the return of the Saw room, of
Oh, and
course.
one thing we didn't mention at the end of Saw,
Huh?
Dr. Lawrence Gordon cuts off his foot and drags himself right the hell out of there. He
And
survives.
will we see him again? Yes, we will. We'll see him in a future movie, but not for several years.
Yes.
Because now, Tucker, I think we agree that Saw 2 below Saw 1
Yes.
for
That's our
our
current
continued
ranking. Ding.
Yeah. Saw 3. Saw 3 teeth, as is on the poster.
I'm so glad they get over that after 3. Just
Yeah.
putting that number of items on the poster.
It might get hard to find like hang 7 hands on a poster or something like that. So yeah. If we're talking about competent protagonists, 3 is also lacking that category because of course you get the classic character Jeff
Reinhardt,
Jeff Reinhardt as the protagonist, who starts off in a wooden crate, falls off of like a forklift that's hoisted him in the air, and presumably has brain damage for the rest of the story. Because dear God, is he so indecisive in how he wants to approach these things. His plot line is his son was killed in just
car accident.
In a car accident, and he basically has to
hit
go
and run.
through all
I
these
think.
moves. No, not a hit and run because they did find the guy. Remember?
True.
We'll get to that in the end. But yeah, he has to basically go through all these rooms and like decide if he wants to forgive or these people who were complicit in letting the driver off with like a 6-month sentence.
Yeah.
Or
true.
Let them die.
Which he does at the end. He like forgives them, but not till about 20 seconds before their life is about to end.
Exactly.
Except he does save one guy. He does save the guy in the pig trap.
He stands around for a majority, about 80% of this person's final moments of life, and he's giving flashbacks of the event, and he's like, what should I do? What's going on? And then at the last minute he decides to try and save them. So he ends up hurting it himself and killing the person.
Yes, exactly. And that never, but I would say it's actually kind of balanced out by his wife is also part of the traps. Dr. Lynn Denlin, who is taxed by Amanda and John Kramer to put brain surgery on to help John Kramer survive his brain tumor. She's pretty competent. She knows what she's doing. She's put under all this pressure. She's got an exploding collar on her neck, and she has to deal with Amanda being an asshole and John being cryptic. But she successfully does very graphic brain surgery on this guy in the Saw 3 room with just random tools. But she's pretty competent. Unfortunately, she's not given as much screen
agency
time as her husband Jeff,
her dummy husband Jeff.
But I think the two of them balance out a little bit. Unfortunately, Jeff's incompetence and at the end when he ends up killing John Kramer and
stealing their fate,
his wife, and then Amanda, the Saw 3, a lot of shit happens in the Saw.
We should point out Saw 3 is where things start getting really convoluted and intertwined, much more than the first 2 films. Because should we talk about the Amanda thing? We haven't even talked about Hoffman because he comes in the next movie.
Yes,
but it's revealed that
no, he's in 5. He starts in 5, I think. Oh no, never mind. You're right. 4. My bad.
Yeah, because it was revealed that Amanda was acting weird and asshole-ish this whole time, only because she was like being blackmailed by this future character Hoffman, and that's revealed in a future movie. So
Saw 3 gets reframed. The events of Saw 3 and the ending of Saw 3 especially gets reframed multiple times throughout the series. So if you are going into this watching to the entire series, I recommend taking notes, because it's genuinely, for me at least, a very fun puzzle to reframe earlier events from earlier movies with future context and see, okay, this character is actually behind this the whole time. And that layers keep building, and it eventually gets a little bit obnoxious. But I think during the core, which we'll get into, which is for us 4 through 6, it's a really interesting puzzle. And 3 is where that whole thing starts.
Yes. If we're talking about iconic traps from 3, I think we have to bring up the crucifixion or the rack,
100%,
as Kramer calls it in the later ones. I feel like that is the most. You always want a Saw trap that's like, oh, I can't watch this, but I need to. I want to watch what happens. And the rack is definitely that, because obviously you have the guy getting his limbs individually slowly twisted around until they break, ending with his neck, and you. Jeff, the key is attached to a shotgun trigger. So if you grab the key, you'll get shot with a shotgun. Except Jeff figures it out by like just stepping out of the way and grabbing the key. But the one guy he saves in the movie is standing in the way of the shotgun blast and gets his face just blown clear off.
Yeah, what a
So
dumb
yeah.
moment.
So Jeff inadvertently kills every single person that he was intended to save
Yeah.
throughout the film.
If you think about it, honestly, it would have been a pretty cool concept to have him save like someone at the beginning and have the two of them work together throughout
Yeah.
them. But unfortunately, Jeff's incompetence and inability to make decisions leads to them all dying.
Yeah.
But we have that one. We've got the cold spray trap, which is
Yep.
crazy. It has a pretty crappy effect at the end when she's covered in ice.
Oh yeah, she's immediately covered in like 3 inches of ice.
Yeah, that's pretty stupid.
Yeah.
We've got
The pig gets trapped.
we've got the pig guts trap, which is fine.
Those are some of the most lazily done pig carcasses I've ever seen, though. Those are the worst looking props I've ever seen.
And you are a pig corpse connoisseur, as
I am a pig
is
corpse
known.
connoisseur. Yes.
Yeah. But Saw 3, Jigsaw pretty interesting in this one because he's dying the whole time and he's sort of like telling his spiel about how he really is dying now, and that's putting more agency on him, and he kind of wants to let go, but Amanda wants to save him and stuff. I think he's weaker in this one than the first two, but he's still pretty interesting. And the fact that he dies, the main antagonist dies at the end of the movie, is pretty interesting.
Well,
he includes himself as part of the trap. Like, he's Jeff's final test. And I do think that's pretty interesting.
As we learn through this series, Jigsaw never really dies. Because as Tucker says, as Tucker said while we were watching, he really pulls a Book of Henry and plans out these things into the future after his death. Yep. He's got dozens of tape recorders planted around the city for various people to find years after his death.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, for me, Saw 3 is going to go in between 1 and 2.
Yeah, well, actually, I have Saw 3 below.
Really?
I think that the house is more interesting than Jeff's series of traps. Mm-hmm. And I also just think the inclusion of Amanda as a twist is more interesting, because Saw 3 doesn't really have that twist at the end, unless you count Lynn being Jeff's wife. But that's not really that interesting.
I'd say Saw 3 is better than Saw 2 because of what we were talking about, how it plays into how it really it is the impetus for the beginning of the Saw core, the Saw kino of 4, 5, and 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Honestly, I'll give you that one.
Okay.
I will concede that one if it's possible that I can get a concession in the future. We got to make some trades.
It's entirely possible.
Okay.
Because now we're on to Saw 4, the Saw kino, as we were talking about. Because boy, oh boy, 4, 5, and 6 are just this. They could arguably be one movie with how interconnected and interwoven all these plot elements are. All these stupid but incredibly interesting plot twists.
Mm-hmm. So Saw 4 is interesting for a few reasons. I think and I think one of the cooler plot twists in the entire series is that 4 takes place at the exact same time as 3.
Yeah, runs parallel.
Exactly. And so you actually able to very quickly reframe the events of 3 and the ending of it as people show up in the Saw 3 room and things are going on. I think that's really interesting. And I also think just the amount of characters that we're introduced to in 4 that are actually competent, they're interesting, mm-hmm. They carry over into future movies. 4 is interesting in that way. I think Rig having to follow this trail of Jigsaw because he's so obsessed with saving people's lives that actually ends up in killing them because of his obsession. And the idea is that Jigsaw's like, hey, if you just stopped, all these people would have survived.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting reframing. And we're also introduced to his wife, Jill Tuck. And we're introduced to Hoffman and Perez and Strom, who all go off.
Oh boy, howdy do they.
So in all honesty, if I think about it, outside of Saw 1, whose characters are great but don't continue, Saw 4 might be the strongest cast of new characters that we're introduced to.
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, obviously, you get the introduction of Hoffman, who ends up being the main protagonist of the next several films.
Yeah.
You get Strom, who I think is a pretty competent protagonist. You get Rig, who is the main protagonist of this film, and probably top 3 best Saw protagonists, just because even though he's basically tricked by Jigsaw into intervening and by proxy causing the death of all these people. I think he still is a very capable protagonist. He doesn't have the stupidity of like a Jeff from 3.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think also there's great we very much appreciated the transitions of Saw 4, and we're
Yeah.
talking about some filmmaking stuff, because the whole series is trash filmmaking.
Yes.
Okay, it's just trashy on purpose filmmaking.
However,
Yeah,
they're genuinely, and like you were saying, and I'm just continuing on while you're having a coughing fit and
yeah.
dying. Probably, you
Whew.
have brain cancer or something.
I have something. There's a key
But
in my throat.
but Saw 4 actually genuinely has some very cool transitions. There's a crash through a mirror that
Yeah, that's the coolest one.
tumbles you into another scene. There's wipes that just continue past the wall. There's like all these different things that genuinely are cool ways to transition from scene to scene.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, well, there is some of that in 3. There's some, I think, a good amount of it in 5. After that, it starts to go away, and it makes me realize, oh, okay, that is a highlight of this.
I think it is because, though, that Saw 4 directed by the editor of the other films in the series. So if you get a talented person
Is that where Darren takes over?
Yeah, I believe that is where
Darren Lynn Bousman.
Yeah, that's where he takes over. The Saw Kino man, because he's going on to do Spiral.
Yes,
Friday.
that's true. Ooh, that's
Yes.
exciting. I forget about
Saw 4 also gets rid of the terrible color grading of the last few films, except for in flashbacks, because we need to know things happened in the past.
Yeah.
So if there's ever just a harsh, gross green or blue or yellow light on anything, you know that this happened in the past. Well, the main story gets rid of that. I have very much appreciated it, because it's just the ugliest thing in the world to look at.
Yeah. So characters plus great introduction to characters. Hoffman, Strong, and Perez not as heavily utilized. They're put in the background for Rig, but the fact that they're introduced here and get their starts as characters, plus Jill Tuck, also introduces a lot of reframing for 3 and interesting elements about Jigsaw's character, as we learn that he had a wife and a pregnancy was terminated, and that's kind of what spurred him on to drive his car off a cliff and all that. There's interesting backstory for Jigsaw, but as he died at the end of 3, he's not really in this one as much. I think that
it opens with the autopsy, of course.
Yes, the autopsy in which he has a beard that he did not have when he was alive.
He grew. Apparently, Jigsaw's corpse grew a beard over the course of being dead, which is interesting. Maybe that just happens in this universe. We have a made up fictional city that we never learn the name of. But maybe the crazy stuff like that just happens.
Yeah.
What are the iconic traps of Saw 4?
Saw 4, I think actually probably, I'm looking at my notes and I'm picking through them to find the traps, because I should have marked them as separate things. But the blind and mute trap at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
With his with Kramer's
lawyer.
Is actually pretty cool. Pretty creative in terms of one guy's blind, one guy's deaf. It's rude. It's an evil trap. It's not really. It's not that not easily escapable as the other ones, or explained by tape. I don't think there's a tape at all.
I don't think so. You just kind of got to figure it out.
But that's probably the highlight of this one, because I'm looking down at it.
You got
the scalping trap.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Very grody, but not super iconic.
The guy who has the ice picks in his eyes or whatever, in the motel.
Oh, the one that Riggs sets up. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you have
he gets torn limb from limb. That's fine.
I really like the idea of the one where there's 2 people pinned back to back by these long metal rods.
Ooh,
and they're through the vital organs of one person and not through the vital organs of the other person.
Yeah.
So they have to pull them out and kill one person to let the other person survive. That's very interesting.
It is interesting. And another one is the one that, of course, returning from Saw 2, Eric Matthews is chained like this on top of an ice block.
It's on his neck.
Is on his neck. Okay, you're right. Because he tries to hang himself. You're right.
Yeah.
On an ice block, while another guy is on a chair, and there's a
Hoffman's on the chair.
Is that Hoffman? Jesus
Yeah.
Christ. Okay, I'm
Hoffman's
trying to place this all together.
because Strom
Oh,
and
you're
Ray
right. Hoffman is in the chair. Yeah.
are trying to track down Hoffman, who's going to be electrocuted if the water runs to a certain side. That's only if Donnie Wahlberg, if the ice melts and Donnie Wahlberg hangs. And
Yeah.
then the lawyer, who we see at the beginning, is actually the guy who's operating that trap only because he has to, because he's being forced to by Jigsaw.
Yeah.
And then, but it turns out at the end of the film that Hoffman himself was Jigsaw the whole time because the water runs to one side, he's not electrocuted, and he was behind the whole thing, and that begins Hoffman's sort of blooming into the main Saw antagonist.
Yeah. So through all this, we all like I think that trap is okay. It's not great. It has an interesting, dynamic between the three of
Oh,
them.
remember when Donnie Wahlberg gets his head smashed by two giant
Yeah.
blocks of ice?
So Eric Matthews meets his end through a just crazy fucking thing. And also Donnie Wahlberg just has, and I would love to meet Donnie Wahlberg and say, hey, you're the guy from Saw 4, because
Yeah.
he just has the most blubbering performance because he's just hanging there and he's just blah blah blah. He's just bubbling the whole time, not really
Yeah.
saying anything. But just looking through my notes, we've got the fact that we learned that Jill Tuck ran a clinic for drug
Yep.
users that Amanda was a part of. And also this guy Cecil, who ends up terminating the pregnancy with a doorknob,
Yep.
who we learned later was controlled by Amanda. And
Yep.
Cecil becomes Jigsaw's first victim
Yep.
with this. What's the trap he's put in?
Oh, like the knife face one.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, he pushes
He
his
has
face
to
with the knives.
he has to push his face through a bunch of knives
Yeah,
to
and
release himself.
and simultaneously through that, we also get the origin of the pig mask as John Kramer picks this up at a Chinese New Year festival.
Yeah.
The pig, which is fine. Where else would it have come from?
I don't know.
But we also get Strom showing up at the end of 3, proving that they take place at the same time.
Yeah.
Hoffman shuts Strom in the Saw room. Strom kills Jeff. There's a whole reframing of 3 at the end there that is really like, oh shit, okay, they're really mixing this all together in a blender.
Yes. Okay. So I think we should rank 4.
Yes.
4 from everything that we talked about. I think it's a highlight. I think this is going to go at the number 2 spot for me.
Easy
above,
number 2.
Above 2 and 3, below 1.
So at the moment we have 1, 4, 3, 2.
Yes. Correct.
Yes. Okay. I should write these down.
Okay, so we're halfway through.
Okay.
Christ. Okay, now we're on to Saw 5. Reliving this is just as exhausting as watching all of them.
I'm having a great time.
Okay, so Saw 5. What's the opening of? Okay, Saw 5. We open up with
the pendulum trap.
Oh, with the pendulum trap. Okay, so the pendulum trap is Hoffman, who we now learn is the new Jigsaw. Long before he even was associated with Jigsaw, he captured this guy who killed his sister and put him in a slowly descending pendulum that cut him in half, despite the fact that the guy completed the task, which he crushed his own hands in some vices that was supposed to let him out. It didn't, and we learned that's because Hoffman wasn't Jigsaw at that point. Jigsaw captures Hoffman because he's like, hey,
you're imitating me, what the heck?
You don't imitate me.
Yeah, he's sort of upset that he's getting credit for something he didn't do.
Yeah. I'm going to blackmail you to become my apprentice.
Yeah.
So, and that's what happens. Hoffman becomes the new Jigsaw apprentice, running parallel to Amanda. And the main plot of 5 is Hoffman, or Strom, excuse me, basically opens up a secret door in the Saw 3 room in which Jigsaw died. He's walking through, he finds a tape recorder, and that's the one where we learned that Jigsaw is really like his Book of Henry because it's like, hello, Detective Strom. It's like, how did you know he would be here? How did you have any earthly idea he would be here?
And Strom then gets put in the drowning head box, in which he pokes himself with a pen and breathes through his neck.
He makes himself a little incision, he stabs himself, and he breathes through this pen that he unscrews.
And then Hoffman ends up saving Jeff's kid, which is not really played into, but we're playing into all the connections.
Because Hoffman's plan was that all the cops would die in this Saw thing, including Strom, played by Luke from Gilmore Girls, and he would come out victorious. He would save a kid from the warehouse, and he'd be the hero cop who killed Jigsaw. who's all the other partners tragically died. Of course, that doesn't happen because Strom also lives. So
Mhm.
now there's this cat and mouse game running through
Yeah.
five,
And
in which
that's really the main plot of Saw
yeah,
5
which I
is
think is very interesting.
yes.
Of Strom trying to like piece together and eventually come to the conclusion that Hoffman, in fact, is Jigsaw, is
Yeah.
the Jigsaw killer. And is this the one where Hoffman's trying to frame Strom,
No,
or is that
that's
six?
6. Yeah,
Okay,
because that's when Strom dies. So basically, what we have running parallel to this is Hoffman's first series of traps, I believe, which is 5 people trapped in a series of rooms
yes,
that are supposed to work together. And in all honesty, that's my favorite series of traps in the series. I think it beats out Jeff's stuff very
yep,
easily. It beats out Riggs stuff because you get a cool interaction between the characters, and of course you have the bald guy in there who's probably my favorite Saw victim of the entire series.
yeah.
It beats out, as we'll get to, Will and Bobby, who I don't really like. So, I think actually thinking about it now, Saw 5 is probably one of the best of that Saw Kino because
Yeah,
the dynamic between Hoffman and Strom is interesting, and the simultaneous trap series is also interesting.
yeah, yeah. You're right. Actually, oh, this could trump four for me. Quite
I,
honestly, this
I
could
think
this
it
could.
might. Just looking through my notes here as well. Uh,
Of course, the series of traps at the five random. Well, they're not random. They're all interconnected because they all had a hand at some point in causing 8 people to die in a
yeah,
building fire, which isn't like as integral to the story
it's
as
not
I
as
wish it had
interconnected.
been.
Yeah.
But it is the thing that they all discovered that they were connected by,
Hmm.
and they learn that if all they had to do was work as a team to get through this entire series of traps.
Yeah, they would
Uh,
have all survived.
yeah, because there's an electrocution thing where if they all took a little bit of shock, they would have lived, and if they all cut their hands down the middle a little bit, they would have lived in
Cut
the
the hand
to
just a
get
little
out
bit. Yeah.
just a little bit. I think that's a pretty good um like concept for that, even though the people in that five group don't play into the story
Yeah.
as much as I could have
But
wished.
they do have an interesting dynamic
Yeah.
in the fact that they don't know if they should trust each other, and they're trying to piece together who each other is and what they're how they're related, which is actually kind of brought back in Jigsaw if you think about it. Um,
Mhm.
but I think all the traps in there are solid enough. Maybe not super iconic, but you get the decapitation, you get the smashing of the keys in the bottles in the roof, you get the
Yep.
chamber one. So while they're not great, I think they're very consistent.
Hmm.
And I definitely enjoyed that series of traps a lot.
Sure.
Um, uh,
I since you conceded three above two for me, I think I'll concede five above four
I
right
think
here.
you'll concede sub 5 by 4 because I'm right. Because I'm right, and you're feeling it. You're
I
feeling it.
don't know. The only detriment of five for me is that five-person group, their traps don't play into the larger story, and
That's
that's
true.
something that does occur in four.
Yeah,
But
and of course in 6 and 7.
okay, so yeah, we're on to six. Okay, all right. Oh Christ,
Oh, actually, hold on. The
what's
last
going
thing at
on?
the end, very end of 5, we have to mention. Uh, End of the cat and mouse game between Strom and Hoffman.
Oh yeah,
Is
because
the glass box trash compactor trap that Hoffman puts himself in and
he's just
sinks into the floor
he's
with
just
blood
in the
dripping on his face as Strom is just fucking obliterated.
yeah he's like slowly sinking into the floor in his glass box.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, of course. And then how does six open again? What's six again?
Hold on.
Oh guys,
Uh
this is exhausting. These
it's the
really blend
one
together, ladies
it's
and
the one with
gents.
the fat guy and the girl who has to cut off her arm.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's whoever gives more flesh can escape.
Who will shed more pound of flesh?
Yeah.
The Jigsaw puns running through all of these are pretty cool, but also in making fun of him, I've also realized that they're pretty easy to come up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so six, like I spoiled a little bit earlier, is Hoffman trying to sort of post mortem blame Strom for
Strom.
all of his
Exactly.
traps,
Yeah.
and he does that because Strom was trying to get out, and he left an entire hand behind, grasping onto the ceiling. So
Yep.
he's planting fingerprints around. He's planting Strom's cell phone. What is the main trap of six? What are those
The
again? I
the main
forget.
trap series is good old William Easton, the leader and
Oh,
CEO of Umbrella Health Company, whatever.
yes.
And this actually is a relatively interesting series of traps. I think it plays interestingly into the fact that this guy could have saved John Kramer's life
Hmm.
because he denied him health care. And the series of traps involve him sacrificing bits of himself to save his co-workers, who
Yep.
are also not great people because they are shitty healthcare individuals who end
Yeah.
up killing people. But that's a good series of traps. Will is not a great character, but the framing of it around the healthcare industry and how that plays into John Kramer's character, I think, is actually pretty
Yeah.
interesting.
It's
And
I get it is supposed to be like his final hurrah or whatever of traps
mhm,
because it's striking back at the industry that caused him to die and that
yeah.
yeah that refused him service.
Hmm. And of course, you also get Roderick as
Oh,
quote unquote
Roderick's in this one.
his son, which is
Yeah.
not true. There's a plot twist at the end, which is actually pretty solid. In which you learn that the journalist that you've been following the whole time is actually his sister, and that's the family that he was talking about.
Hmm.
And the wife and the son, who you assumed was his wife and son, are actually the wife and son of the guy who he
Refused
ended.
help service to at the beginning of the film, so
Yes,
they have to decide if they want to basically spare the life of somebody that caused their husband and father to die.
yeah,
Spoiler alert, they don't spare his life. They shoot him full of a bunch of hydrofluoric acid that causes him to melt from the inside out.
yep.
Uh, Christ. I really like the more which I can't say this for Saw the Final Chapter, Saw 7, Saw 3D. All three of those titles are
Are
correct for
true.
the last
Yep.
film. But I really was more enthralled by the cop drama of all this because
Hmm.
it is Perez who
And
surprised
Erickson, good
and
old
Erickson,
earpiece Erickson.
Who always has like a Bluetooth earpiece in. And surprise, Perez she lived through an explosion thing. They're back and they're still like they're sort of slowly closing in on Hoffman until they
Hmm.
like decode a message from the original pendulum trap that we talked about.
Yeah.
And whew, it's just all crazy and like kind of soap opera ish, but I'm digging. I just love every minute of it.
Yeah.
And they figure it out, and he like smashes the thing and slashes Erickson across the throat and like chokes out Perez.
Hmm.
Yeah, Christ. Whew.
So I think this is the peak of Hoffman
Yeah,
as a character because his involvement is so forefronted in terms of he's clearly the killer and he just does not give a shit and he's trying
yeah.
to frame Strom. I think that all is really interesting. Unfortunately, I think Perez and Erickson are not as interesting as Strom was. So their cat and mouse with him, while it's an interesting framing of
Well,
it.
what I think the interesting thing is that we never see them alone. Basically, Hoffman's always with them when they're
Mm,
figuring stuff out.
true.
So that's
Yeah.
very cool. That he's just like, oh boy, oh geez, I hope they don't figure it out
Yeah.
as they slowly piece things together.
Hmm.
What else? There's something else I'm gonna bring up. Oh yeah, at the end of 6, Hoffman goes back to the warehouse where the healthcare people died. Which we should talk about a bit more about those traps. The merry-go-round where he has to choose 4 people to kill, right? Yeah, he has to kill
Save,
4 people
save two, kill six,
because
or kill four.
because his formula for deciding who at the healthcare company gets coverage basically kill only like rejects 2/3 of people, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Yes. There's also the hot steam trap maze.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah, that's a good one.
the breathing crushing one.
Yeah, to start off
Everything
him. Hmm.
it's him versus someone else, and he has to hold his breath longer than someone else, otherwise he'll be crushed. Yeah, and then at the
It's
end
a
of
good series
6,
of traps.
it's a good
I
series of
think,
traps.
unfortunately, the framing of it, while it's mildly interesting, you just don't give a shit about Will. He's a bad person, and the
Yeah,
people he's killing are, for the most part, bad people.
yeah,
So there's not really like anyone you're rooting for in that series of traps. You're like, actually, kind of wish Hoffman slash John Kramer actually won in this
yeah.
situation because these.
But seeing him like having to come to terms with like I could kill people from my penthouse office, but not make the decision when they're in front of me. That's
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah.
And then at the end of 6, Jill Tuck basically puts the reverse bear trap on Hoffman and locks him in a room, but he gets out, right? We see him get out.
He rips his hands out of the straps.
Oh yeah, he because he has the reverse bear trap on, and he breaks one of his hands. He pulls a real Donnie Wahlberg to get out of the restraints, and then shoves the reverse bear trap in between two metal bars in the door, so he can rip his face out, and his cheek is like hanging off of him.
I don't think we ever actually mentioned that Amanda put uh uh Donnie Wahlberg in the Saw 1 room, and he
Yeah,
but to get out.
exactly.
There's so many layers of this, guys. I apologize if we're not doing the entire series here, but we're trying
to burn through these as quickly as possible.
But Hoffman does survive. He finds a way to neutralize the reverse bear trap. Even though Jill did not give him an actual way, did not give him a key. And that is actually how Saw 6 ends. Honestly, thinking about this again, it's maybe better than I thought. I don't necessarily know if I personally enjoy it more than 5 or 4 or 5. But the three of them are so consistent and so interconnected. I have them all at the same rating on Letterboxd.
Same.
So I could put them anywhere. Where do you feel 6 should go compared to 4 and 5?
I'm gonna go. Oh, because I put 6 last in mine. 4, 5, and 6, or it goes 4, 5, 6 for me.
Yeah.
So above 2 and 3.
Yes.
But below.
I have 5, 4, 6, which we did concede my ranking on there. So we'll put 1, 5, 4, 6, 3, 2.
Okay, sounds good with me. And now, okay.
Final chapter. We're done after this.
Nope. Hold on. You really thought we were. We have Saw the Final Chapter, which in all reality does have a pretty interesting idea for a protagonist, but he just sucks because of course we have Bobby Hagen, who is faking being a Jigsaw survivor to sell books and go on press tours and such. And he's put in an actual Saw room house. And my problem with Saw 7, Saw the Final Chapter, Saw 3D, is that it is the final chapter. It brands itself as the final chapter. But we get almost no screen time for these characters that we have built up over the last several movies.
Yes.
Almost all of the movie is dedicated to Bobby, to the cop who looks like Freddie Prinze Jr. Gibson. I don't care about these people. We get lots of like non sequitur traps with people we don't know and don't care about.
Yeah.
That's what the issue is of this movie, is that they're like, shit, we need to close out the series, but we also want to deliver the same old Saw stuff that we always deliver. Yeah. And it brings detriment to the whole thing. And I think it is a terrible way to close out that main series.
Yeah, because while Bobby's conceit of being a character in the Saw universe and faking being a Saw victim is really interesting, all things considered.
And he's pretty competent and can do the traps, but he just sucks, and I hate him.
Yeah, and the people that he's saving you don't really care about. But you're right in the fact that they killed off so many characters in Saw 6 and 5 that really all we have is Hoffman and Jill Tuck, who are sort of having
and we get the return,
yes,
of course,
it's true,
of
underutilized return
of Dr. Lawrence Gordon. We saw him crawl out. We see him cauterize his wound, the wound of his leg at the beginning of this one, and
saved by Jigsaw.
Yeah, he apparently becomes a disciple of Jigsaw, which I personally think is just the stupidest thing that they could have done with this character. They very clearly I don't know, bring back the guy from the first one, make him be behind some of it as well.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Jigsaw was also testing Hoffman this whole time. And at the end of the movie, Lawrence Gordon shows up to kill Hoffman after we think that he's going to get away with everything. And I don't even really want to talk. The traps are the special effects in this, by the way, the practical effects of bodies and stuff are the worst of the entire series. Somehow, when this had the largest budget.
Also because they put a really weird focus on 3D, because of course this was during the 3D era, and they wanted to really have things are coming towards the camera, and they just don't.
Whoa, that guy's eyeball is flying out of
the
me.
blood is CGI for some parts of it, which is really strange. But Yeah,
The lead singer of Linkin Park shows up in one of the traps as a Nazi, and he has to tear some like skin off of his back, and it just looks terrible. Like
yeah,
not even like, oh, I can't look at it. Like, oh, this looks like the fakest skin I've ever seen in my life.
yeah.
Ugh,
Um,
bad movie.
yeah. Saw 7 really is the terrible ending. The reframing of having Dr. Gordon be the double secret first apprentice of Jigsaw is kind of lame because we didn't see him show up at all throughout the rest of the series.
Hmm.
Um, Gibson sucks.
Gibson
Bobby sucks.
sucks. Bobby sucks.
Hoffman and Jill Tucker are underutilized, even though they're the more interesting characters that we actually care about from the other movies.
Hmm.
What
It's
a,
the
what
worst
a
one.
what a, yeah, and we're easily putting this Saw 7, Saw 3D, Saw the final chapter, the
Yeah.
last God, the last one in the series.
Oh, thank God.
At the
Saw movies
bottom.
are done. Yeah.
So we have Saw 1, Saw 5, 4, 6, 3, 2, 7.
Okay. And Tucker, we're done with the video, right? That's it? That's the video?
That's a video, except
What?
7 years later,
Oh my God.
Jigsaw came out, and
Oh.
this one we're probably going to talk about the most in terms of our disagreement on it, because I just think it's a modernized, sterilized version of the Saw series, and it loses the entire charm of being interconnected for the most part. The ending twist is just fine. It's just okay. And it's a bunch of characters I don't give a fuck about. It's
Yeah.
honestly,
I
when
think
I
it
think
I think
about it,
it's more permissible that we don't care about these characters because it is
yeah,
7 years later. It's more
true.
permissible than 7.
Hmm. But I think that's still a major problem I have with 7, and I think that carries over to this. And I think the fact that it does lack the consistent visual tone and atmosphere that the other ones had sets it apart in a way that I don't think necessarily fits into the rest of the series.
Yeah.
And we are introduced to Logan Nelson, a veteran who is the triple extra secret apprentice of John Kramer.
Boy, oh boy, you thought that there was too many secret apprentices? How about we slap one more on there for you?
Yep.
It's this guy who's
Yeah.
got slashes on his back because I kind of do appreciate the twist of Jigsaw, as it turns
It's
out
good.
that the two stories that we've been seeing occur at vastly different times in history.
Yeah, they
Because
did the Saw 2 thing, but over like 3 decades.
exactly,
Yeah.
because the beginning, the group of people going through the traps that we see, when does that even happen? Before Saw 1?
Because it's his very first trap series. It's
Yeah,
Jigsaw's very first trap series.
because apparently one of the guys killed his nephew or whatever. But doesn't matter. Um, that whole
I might have
series
been
of
asleep for
things,
that.
that whole series of things takes place before Saw 1. We see a guy in the very first bucket head trap he gets slashed up by some circular saws. But in fact, he doesn't die. He's saved by Jigsaw and becomes Jigsaw's very first apprentice prime.
Yeah, and then
And then the
he much later on recreates that series of traps that he was initially caught in to
mhm,
and gets the bodies the same, and sets he's working for the hospital where the bodies are, so he's taking John Kramer's DNA and planting it around so people think that he's back alive, which is
yeah.
pretty cool.
That there is a reveal about halfway through the movie that makes you think that Jigsaw's still alive,
True.
because you don't know yet that this is taking place pre Saw 1.
Yes.
And it's well done, but it's cheap,
Hmm.
because and even while you were saying that you don't care about these people, after watching the movie, you're like, oh, I shouldn't have cared about those people because
Hmm.
they don't have anything to do with the current most pertinent timeline story going on.
Yeah. Yeah. So the victims in that trap series aren't very interesting. I think the trap series in general is not very interesting.
I don't care.
What's your favorite one?
I don't think I have a favorite, but I think they're very consistently operating at like a C level for me.
Exactly. And I think that it's that low consistency without any highlights that makes me think, wow, this series of traps in over the course of the whole movie is not very interesting. They're
But
weirdly
I think the
not
same can be
fair.
said. I think the same can be said for the series of traps in 5, right? What the group of people who are supposed to work as a team.
Yeah.
None of those stand out to me.
True, but
Um,
I think the differences for me is that I enjoyed the characters that were in there a little bit more, and the fact that they
sure.
had to work together and they had better. Honestly, Yeah, Jigsaw really did the Saw 5 thing again, but with less interesting characters and I think less interesting traps on the whole.
Okay.
And also having Hoffman set that up is more interesting than having well, of course we have Kramer setting that up, but we don't know that. We think it's Nelson. Jigsaw, I just think is a cash grab. I don't think it ties into the series enough for me to feel like it recaptures the energy that I enjoyed so much from what we call Sakino of 4 through 6.
Hmm.
The
But
traps
I
are very
think it.
interesting, the
I
characters
think
are
it.
very interesting. The
Yeah.
cinematography goes to a much more modern style that loses the charm of the originals. And
I don't think you can fault it for that. Quite honestly, that's just how we make movies now.
yeah,
I don't think that you can really fault it for that. For not like, why didn't they shoot this like a 2006 movie? Because that style of filmmaking is passe now. Okay, but I can understand your criticisms of not caring about the characters. There's something I wanted to bring up. I do think it does in the moment as an experience. If you sit in the theater like, okay, Saw's back, baby, it does capture like the like, oh shit moments.
yeah,
Like when you see that the lasers weren't active on Logan's collar, but they were on the cop's collar.
yeah.
That's a great
Detective
moment.
Halloran.
Yeah. um the return the shock and awe return of Jigsaw, while stupid, is a good whoa what's happening moment,
Mhm.
so I think
I
there's
unfortunately I think that's all undercut by hey we have a triple extra secret apprentice that I think is just really cheap, and it's just a way to reframe like hey we're not only reframing the last movie we're reframing the whole series fuck you,
for but it, yeah,
but not
po,
really
just post hoc adding another apprentice on there that doesn't really impact the rest of the series.
because
I can
while
understand a lot of
Gordon was a
those.
cheap double secret extra apprentice,
Hmm.
at least we already knew the character and it
Yeah,
tied it back to the first one. It was
it's
stupid,
a it's a
but
real
it
it's a real Rise of Skywalker Palpatine thing.
very true.
I don't know. I think the mishandling of Lawrence Gordon's character uh is worse to me than just tacking on a new guy that we don't really have any positive or negative attachment to.
Sure.
So where does Jigsaw fall for you in your ranking?
For me, it's third from the bottom. I think, and that's different on my personal list than the one we've colloquially no collectively come up with. But I'm willing to concede it a little higher because I do think that you make some reasonable points about maybe why it's not as bad as I'm thinking. But
Hmm.
how does I will pitch just below 3. Is that okay with you?
Um, yeah, I'm okay with just below 3.
Okay.
I think if we combine both of our feelings on it, that's fine with me.
Because looking back on it, 2 loses the charm and 7 shits on it. But 1 and 3 through 6 are very consistent. They're
Yeah,
all intertwined. They all have interesting plot twists and soap opera character arcs. Um, it's just is really Jigsaw 2 and 7 that are really separated from that.
yeah. And then, Tucker, we finally reached the end, except not quite, because this Friday, Tucker, we are getting Spiral from the Book of Saw. Spiral,
Mm-hmm.
spiral, spiral, spiral.
Spout.
And we'll be doing a review for that movie after it comes out, and we will be installing it, planting it in to our Saw films ranking. Yeah,
Yep,
just like that.
just like that.
But Christ all Fridays, if you made it through all the movies or all of this video, more power to you. You are one of our strongest willed fans. And for our strongest willed fans, we want you to subscribe to this channel. We want you to like this video because this is maybe one of the worst and best videos we've ever done.
Oh yeah.
And if you want to talk Saw with us, just hit that Discord link in the description. Join up. Just at Tucker or I, and just type the word Saw, and we'll go off. We'll just go off on a tangent.
Yep.
But thank you for watching, everyone. Thank you for traveling through the highs and lows of this Saw ranking with us, and we'll see you at the Spiral.
What the fuck does that mean?
I don't know.
That didn't make any sense.
That doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Is Saw dudes a good opening?
If you really think that would be the best way to like sell a video, go ahead.
Saw dudes. Maybe I could go a classic. Hello, I want to do rank the Saw movies.
I want to make a list.
I want to make a list.
Okay.